Hey everybody, Reverend Carl here. Thanks again for tuning into my YouTube channel here. I really appreciate it. I am standing in front, and I have to speak kind of quietly here because it's a bit of a sacred space, you see, but I'm actually standing in front of a prayer wall that is in one of the churches in my neighborhood. Rather large prayer wall, and of course this comes from the same idea as the Western Wall or the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. And of course the people of the Jewish faith have been practicing the same kind of thing for years, thousands of years. What you see here are little slips of paper that people have written their prayers on, and they insert them in this wall. What's really kind of interesting about this whole thing is that these folks who write these little pieces of paper are coming from a great deal of faith. They believe, their faith is that their prayers will be answered, and especially if they write down their prayer and submit it into sacred space. What's interesting about that is that, see, that kind of practice has been going on for many, many, many years, right? And it's the New Thought movement of the last 100 years or so that started to tell people that if whatever you want, visualize it, write it down. As long as you write it down, it will come to you. What's true. The thing to keep in mind, though, is that you really have to have in mind the source of where this all comes from, that thing that you want. Where would that come from, really? You know, and I'm reminded of, when it comes to prayer, for one thing, Jesus always said, whenever two or more are gathered in my name, I'll be there too. So miracles happen. The story that comes to mind, kind of a humorous one, is about the story of a man who was in a flood, and the waters were rising. He climbed out onto his house, onto the rooftop, and the water was coming up to the roof, and a man in a rowboat comes by and says, get in, get in. And the man on the roof says, no, I've been praying to God, and God will save me. Well, the rowboat guy takes off. And after a while, the water gets higher and higher, and finally it's up to the peak, and the man's standing on the peak of his roof. The water's coming up to his ankles. A speedboat comes by, and the man on the speedboat says, get in, get in. And the man says, no, I've been praying to God, and God will save me. Well, sure enough, the water keeps coming up and coming up. He's hanging onto the chimney, and he gets swept away in the water. And about that time, a helicopter is hovering overhead and drops a rope to him. And the man in the helicopter is shouting down to him, get on the rope, come on, we'll save you, get on the rope. No, I've been praying to God, God will save me. Well, about that moment, the water gets too swift, and he's taken under, and he drowns. Next thing he knows, he's in heaven. Next thing he knows, he's looking at God himself. And the first thing he says to God, God, why didn't you save me? And God says, well, I sent you a rowboat, I sent you a speedboat, I sent you a helicopter. So the thing to keep in mind is that when you pray, be open to hearing however God's going to answer that prayer. It could be anything. But I guarantee you, if it's a good answer, it's coming from God. If it's something that may even surprise you, as I like to say, if it came out of left field, it came from God. But it's going to be good. So hang on to that faith. Hang on to whatever you want to call it. But don't be afraid to write down something that you're praying for and put it in a sacred space. Don't be afraid to talk to God. Don't be afraid to listen to God and hear what's going on. You might get something better than you expected. The cherry on the sundae, you might say. That's it for today, folks. God bless you. I do appreciate it. Have a good one.